Last Friday, Senator Obama called me and asked, well, first of all, he said he wanted to reach out to me, which I thought was a pretty extraordinary way for our new senator to have an opportunity for the two of us to meet. And he said he was going to be in Peoria today, and so I invited him to come to our office. I know he has a number of other things, including a town meeting that he's going to be involved with, but I actually met Senator Obama when he and I were both in Washington at a meeting, and obviously he ran a very, very good campaign. The thing that I want to say, and then Senator Obama obviously can speak for himself, is that, and he knows this, our delegation, when the election is over, has always worked together. And we have done a lot of good for Illinois. And to have somebody like Senator Obama begin his tenure as our new U.S. Senator by reaching out to some of us in downstate Illinois and offer to be helpful, I think is extraordinary. And I think it speaks well of what he wants to do for the state, and more importantly for the citizens of our great state. And I look forward to working with him. I've had a great relationship with all the members of our delegation. And the reason we've been successful in Central Illinois and in the 20 counties that I represent is because our delegation does work together. When the election is over, what people want is for us to set the politics at the door and to work together on behalf of the people and to solve problems. And I know that's the kind of, actually it's the kind of campaign that Senator Obama talked about and ran when he was running. And you don't really hear that too much in a campaign for one of the highest elective offices in the country. But I look forward to working with him. We've got a lot of stuff going on here. I know that the senator had visited the Ag Lab and knows a little bit about our work on the Illinois River and some of our transportation and infrastructure needs. But Senator, thanks so much for coming to Peoria and reaching out to me, and whatever you'd like to say.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to be long. I just want to thank Congressman LaHood for being such a gracious host for me as I'm here in Peoria. I did want to reach out to Congressman LaHood immediately for a couple of reasons. Number one, he's got a reputation as being one of the most thoughtful and effective legislators that we have here in Illinois. Number two, I think he represents the tradition of Bob Michael and others who have, in fact, put aside partisan differences when it comes to solving problems on behalf of the citizens of Illinois. And so I wanted to contact him immediately to get some suggestions from him in terms of how I can be effective as part of the Illinois delegation. And you know, one of the pleasures of this campaign is the number of times that I've been able to come to Peoria and the surrounding counties and areas to learn more about the issues that confront citizens here. I don't presume going into office that I know everything or that I've got a monopoly on wisdom or the answers to some of the daunting problems that we face. And so my job is at least equal parts listening as well as talking. And what we're trying to do now is to make sure that I'm listening not only to folks who supported me in the campaign, but also people who didn't support me, but who I know have the best interests of Illinois at heart. So I'm looking forward to a constructive conversation with the congressman and a long-term constructive relationship with the congressman on issues like the Ag Lab or making sure that we've got our base here in Peoria for our National Guardsmen, that it remains open, or making certain that our infrastructure support is as strong as possible and that the transportation bill reflects the interests of the people of Illinois. And so those are issues that I'm sure we're going to be able to work together on. Congressman LaHood's been working in Capitol Hill a lot longer than most, and certainly longer than me since I've never worked there. And I'm very mindful of the fact that I'm going to be needing to work with more experienced hands in order to be effective. So I appreciate his graciousness in welcoming me here, and I'm happy to answer any questions that people may have.
Senator-elect and Congressman, one of the issues, of course, one of the hottest issues on people's minds in Illinois and across the nation is the war in Iraq. The two of you have shared some differing opinions on exactly what we should be doing there. In the last couple of days in Fallujah, fighting has increased, and our death toll for U.S. soldiers, I think, has risen now to 14 just in one day. What are your thoughts as we are entering another firestorm in Iraq?
Well, maybe I'll respond first just by saying that I was very clear during the campaign that I was skeptical about us initially going in, but I was absolutely certain that once we went in, we had to make it work. And President Bush was kind enough to call me a day after the election to congratulate me, and we spoke for several minutes. And one of the things I reiterated to him is that it's now all our wars. It's not a Republican war or a Democrat war. It's a war with our troops and our young men and women, and we've got to make sure that we are creating an environment in which they can succeed in their mission. So I think on a bipartisan basis, what you're going to see is support for the troops. We want the mission, whether it's narrowly in Fallujah or more broadly in terms of securing Iraq, to be successful, and I think that you're going to see a lot of cooperation moving forward to making sure that that happens. That doesn't mean that there aren't going to be differences in terms of strategy, that questions aren't going to be raised on both sides, not just by Democrats but also by Republicans in terms of how the administration is effectuating its policies. But it does mean that all of us are rooting for success.
Well, you all know how I feel about the war and how I voted on it, and in part I think this election was a referendum about the conduct of this president and the war. And in part it was about other things too, but what's going on in Iraq today will continue until elections are held, that we stand up a government, that we continue to stand up an army and a police force, until the country is stable. And I've supported the president on this. I'm going to continue to support him. I support the troops. I've talked to a lot of the troops that have been over there, that have returned, as many of you have when you went out to the guard base and saw them. I've never heard one of those people ever whine or complain or say one bad thing. What they did tell me was they're doing a lot of good there. And that's the thing we need to remember. There's a lot of good things happening in Iraq. And we all ache for those whose lives have been lost and for their family members. But it is the price that is paid when you're trying to stand up a government.
Mr. Obama, are you planning to reach out to other Republican Congress members around the state the way you have with Congressman LaHood?
Absolutely. We've already put in a call and a request for a meeting with the Speaker of the House, Denny Hastert. I intend to meet with each and every member of the Illinois delegation, Republican and Democrat, before I'm sworn in, just to get their advice and their input. I'm happy that my first meeting with a Republican congressman is Congressman LaHood, because, as I said, I've always admired the manner in which he reflects the practical, common sense attitudes of people in Illinois. And I'm looking forward to working with him, and I'm looking forward to working with the rest of the congressional delegation.
I know you've always had a pretty good relationship with Senator Durbin.
Mm-hmm.
Now that it looks like he's going to be the minority whip, do you think he might have less time to show you around and show you the ropes?
Yeah, he is going to be a busy man, and I think that Illinois is fortunate when they've got the Speaker of the House in one chamber, and they've got the second-ranking Democrat in the other chamber. I think that bodes well for Illinois, and as long as we're able to set aside differences on particular votes or particular policies when it comes to issues like base closings, or it comes to issues like infrastructure improvements, then I think Illinois citizens will be served well by having a pair of such powerful individuals in Washington.
Senator-elect Congressman, how will you come together to try to create jobs here in Illinois on both sides?
Well, that's obviously a big question, and I'm sure that there's going to be some philosophical differences. But again, I've spoken to Bill Frist, I've spoken to President Bush. Democrats, I think, would make a mistake if they're rooting for failure at this point, right? I mean, we all want. I told the president, I said, I want you to succeed, because at this point he's the president, and He doesn't have any more elections to run. You know, he just ran his last election. I wish Congressman myself could say the same thing. Yeah, we probably have a few more left in us. But what that means is that he's liberated in some sense to just think about what the long-term benefits of the country are with respect to his policies. You know, I think that there are areas like tax simplification, perhaps looking at the tax code to figure out how do we incentivize jobs here in the United States as opposed to jobs moving offshore, where you're going to see some agreement. And the other area where I suspect, other areas where I suspect that, you know, we can see some real bipartisan work is on transportation and infrastructure. That's not a partisan issue. I think that all of us recognize that if we've got locks and dams that work, if we've got roads and bridges that are that are operational, if our transportation system continues to be the hub of the country, that will be good for job creation here in Illinois. And then also on healthcare and education. All of us agree that if we're going to be competitive in this global economy, that our kids have to get a first-class education, and we know that a lot of schools are doing a good job, but some aren't. How can we improve that? And then on the healthcare front, you know, I just met with both executives of Caterpillar and the UAW to talk about, you know, some of the issues as they're moving forward. And where they agree is that healthcare is killing them. And that should be an area where we may not agree on each and every issue, but on, for example, ideas like improving the use of medical technology to reduce paper in medical systems and cut down on overhead costs to control spiraling healthcare costs. That should be something that we should be able to come together on.
Congressman, again.
Well, let me just say something in response to his question. There's a lot of ways we're going to work together. We're going to pass a transportation bill, which is going to be good for Illinois. Right. When you look at what's going on in I-74, over 200 people show up to work there every day on a $400 million project. We're going to pass, hopefully, at least a $300 billion bill. Senator Obama will probably have a chance to vote on that now. We're going to pass an energy bill eventually. Senator Obama will have a chance to vote on that. That means more ethanol production, more biodiesel. That means more jobs for Central Illinois. It means opportunities that we don't even know about for wind energy and clean coal technology in Southern Illinois, which will be a bonanza for jobs, taking the dirty coal down there, developing opportunities. And then, you know, Senator Obama mentioned the locks and dams. That's, you know, that's a huge project over a 10-year period. That's going to mean an awful lot of jobs all up and down the Illinois River, and the other work we're doing on the Illinois River. There will be lots of opportunities to do things for Illinois. And I agree with what Senator Obama said. For the first time in about a decade, we now have two significant people in leadership positions. Some of us remember the days when Bob Michael was leader, Dan Rostenkowski was chairman of Ways and Means, when Everett Dirksen was the minority leader. We're getting back to those days again, and people in Illinois should recognize that we're now, after a decade or so, back to the same kind of clout that we once had. And it's going to be good for Illinois. You're going to see a lot of positive things happen and a lot of good leadership from Senator Durbin, Speaker Hastert, Senator Obama, and the rest of our delegation. This is going to be a very, very good period for the people of Illinois.
One of the president's top priorities is Social Security. His starting point is a report by a commission which recommends personal retirement accounts. How can that be something that you would work together on?
Well, you know, I have not looked at the details of what's being proposed, and my understanding is that the president is going to put forward a specific set of proposals in the coming months in terms of how he would like to see this move forward. And you know, what I've said consistently is that I keep an open mind. I think that the major challenge for a significant shift in how Social Security operates is how do you deal with the transition costs involved, because right now you and I are paying not for our own retirement but for the retirement of people who are entering the system currently. And we've got to make sure that those commitments are absolutely adhered to. I want to see Social Security stable and secure for the retirees as far as out in the future as possible. And if there are ways that we can change the system that allow for that, then I'm all for it. If I think that it's going to weaken the system or destabilize the system over the long term, then I'll be resistant to it. But I think it's too early at this point for me to make an assessment in terms of the proposals until I actually see something on paper.
Congressman, you guys have pretty much listed a laundry list of projects you could potentially work on together. Again, what's your reaction to having a Democrat call you for suggestions?
I think it comports with the whole way that he ran his campaign. I mean, whenever he came to Central Illinois, I mean, he did talk about the idea that one man can't do it alone, that we all have to work together. I liked very much many of the things that Senator Obama said throughout his campaign because it really fits with the way that we've all worked together. And he was saying it before the election. When a lot of people were trash-talking one another, he wasn't doing that. I like that. And I think the people liked it. That's why he got 73% of the vote, because they liked what he was saying. Charlie, let me just say this. I think we have to be careful about what we do with Social Security. Even when the president was talking about it during the campaign, you saw what happened. It is the third rail. It can be so politicized in an instant. And I think all of us in these public policy positions are going to be very careful and study very carefully whatever proposals happen. Social Security is so important. It is the safety net for so many senior citizens. I see them all the time, and many of these people are living on it. This is their only income, and we've got to be careful. And I also talk to younger people who think it's not going to be there by the time they retire, and that's the dilemma we have at both ends. And so we just have to be careful. We'll see what the president says and what he proposes, and then see what happens.
Go from there.
Senator and Congressman, speaking of safety nets, what about those who are in poverty? There is a movement from the National Community Action Association to call, to ask the White House to call a White House conference on poverty. Do you think that's something that President Bush is favorable to? What we're trying to bring the awareness and poverty to the forefront, as it was done 40 years ago when Lyndon Johnson was president?
Well, I'm not familiar with what the particular proposal is. I certainly think that one of the challenges that we're going to have going forward is that there are portions of our society that are being left behind in this global economy. And, oftentimes they don't vote at very high rates. And they don't have lobbyists in Washington, and so their agendas can be neglected. I trust that both Republicans and Democrats want to see all people succeed. They want to see all children have opportunity. And there may be some disagreements in terms of how we get there. But I think that it is going to be important and necessary for all of us to look and see how can we improve the life chances of people who may be unskilled, don't have a lot of work experience, and are struggling to get by, and increasingly are working and poor. Right? I mean, one of the challenges that we have now, I think that both Republicans and Democrats contributed to improving the welfare system so that it didn't breed the sort of dependency that the old system had. But now the challenge we have is we've got a lot of people who are working and are not making ends meet. How do we create for them a situation where they can raise their families, they can afford to put a roof over their heads, they can afford to keep their children fed? Those are all going to be challenging issues. So to the extent that this is something that the administration wants to work on, they'll have a ready partner with me.
Senator-elect, in the event I don't get to see you later, can you tell us a little bit about your book deal?
I don't have a book deal. This was something that was...
Rumor?
Well, it's not a rumor. I wrote a book 10 years ago. I thought it was a pretty good book, but and I got pretty good reviews, and then it went to the bargain table pretty quick at Barnes & Noble. I think it was out for about a year and then went out of print. With some of the attention that I received After the primary, the publisher reissued it, and it went to the bestseller list. And that's always nice, because if you spend all that time writing a book, you like the fact that people read it. And what that has done is it's prompted some publishers to offer me the possibility of writing another book. But we haven't finalized anything yet. I told these publishers that were interested that I couldn't have this conversation until I got the election out of the way. And so it's very premature, and you know, I think the reporter jumped the gun a little bit on that.
Okay. Let's talk more about education. On a related note, really, with poverty, the haves and have-nots, still a big issue with education. Talk of unfunded mandates, desegregation, still an issue with our schools. The U.S. Justice Department actually filing suit against Chicago public schools now. What are your thoughts on how Republicans and Democrats can work together, particularly in Illinois, where there seems to be such a dividing line between haves and have-nots in our school districts?
Well, I think there are two issues. One is a funding issue, and that's something that is primarily going to be determined at the state level. What I think that Congressman LaHood and I can work on is making sure that whatever federal money is available for schools comes back to Illinois. And I think that we'd all agree that we want our fair share. And you know, we have seen problems consistently through a whole host of administrations with respect to special education funding, for example. That's something where we've never quite met our obligations at the federal level to state governments and local governments. I'd like to see us improve that. Whether we're going to be able to do that in a meaningful way, given the fiscal constraints that we have right now and the fact that we're fighting a war, I don't know, but that's something that I've talked about during the campaign I'd like to see continue. And there's a second component to education, and that has to do with how we create the best practices and most effective teaching in our schools. You know, I actually think that there's some agreement between the parties that innovation is good, that developing and training teachers who are focused on children and have more creative ways of teaching children is a positive. We're going to see a huge exit of teachers from the system as the baby boomer generation moves forward, which means that we're going to have to do a better job of recruiting and training teachers, and I think that that's something that, again, you know, there shouldn't be too much partisan fighting about.
How about one last one from somebody who didn't ask one? Anybody? Okay, Molly, you get it. You're it.
Great. Mr. Keyes never did, I'm assuming, give you a concession call. Can both of you speak to whether that looks bad for all Republicans, and should that be a normal part of the process?
Yeah, well, you know, I think that Mr. Keyes was unique. I don't ascribe to the Republican Party Mr. Keyes's failure to give me a call, because, you know, if I'm getting calls from President Bush and John McCain and Bill Frist, and I don't get a call from Alan Keyes, that's okay. So you know, that's not really something that I've spent a lot of time worrying about.
Thanks, guys.
I got a call from Steve Waterworth, who congratulated me. You know, Molly, the truth is that it's, you know, it really sort of goes along with the whole campaign that was run against Senator Obama. I don't think anybody should be surprised that he didn't get a call. He should have gotten a call, but I mean, anybody reading that, I don't think anybody would be surprised by it.
I wasn't.
No, I mean, the kind of campaign that was run against him and the things that were said about him, and so it should be no surprise to anybody that he didn't, and he should have, but...
That's not how we do things in Illinois.
That's right. Thank you all very
guys.
much.
Thank you.